So in this video I will rank all US presidents from George Washington all the way to Donald Trump. I had to judge a total of 44 presidents because I left out William Henry Harrison and Grover Cleveland, and Donald Trump had both 2 non-consecutive terms, so they are counted twice. That's why we only have 44 presidents on this list, even though there are 47 in real life. Please consider liking and subscribing so you won't miss any new videos on this channel. A quick note before we start, I'm not an American, I'm a German, so I will have some different views on some political topics in the United States. Let's get started. 44. James Buchanan. It's hardly surprising that we start with this one, as he is the guy who refused to send troops to crush the Confederate States of America after they seceded from the Union. Also, he talked a lot in public about that he is against secession, but he didn't do anything against the succeeding states like South Carolina, who seceded immediately after the election, with the justification that the Constitution of the United States wouldn't allow him to take action against it. It's not true. 43. Andrew Johnson. This guy only became president because Abraham Lincoln wanted to run in the 1864 election on a Union ticket, because Johnson was a Democrat and he was also very racist. So after he became president, he immediately started to work against the Reconstruction policy that the radical Republicans wanted to do. And I think he's a big reason that black people in the South had to face discrimination for another century and even today. 42. Woodrow Wilson. I know that there are lots of people out there who love Woodrow Wilson, but I personally think that this guy's personality was a complete disaster. He was very racist, tried to enforce racial segregation again, and even showed the movie Birth of a Nation at the White House, which glorified the Confederates. Then there is his Sedition Act, which even more showed his dictatorial personality. And I don't like his idea of bringing democracy everywhere in the world, like the Wilson Doctrine. I'm not a very big fan of this. Overall, terrible president. Next. 41. Franklin Pierce. The key word for him is bloody Kansas. Overall, a weak and depressive president, although I can't blame him too much because his son was killed in a train accident only weeks before he was inaugurated. Still, his pro-slavery policy was just terrible and overall pushed the United States more in the direction of the Civil War. 40. Warren G. Harding. Another president where I just have to say a keyword: Teapot Dome scandal. There is no other president with a bigger corruption scandal, and he was overall weak and didn't want his job, so yeah. 39. George W. Bush. I think his occurrence at Ground Zero was one of the most epic presidential moments in US history. But the Iraq War was just a disaster and terrible, and it was based on lies. 2 million people died because of him in this senseless war, and Iraq is even today unstable. I know that Saddam Hussein was a mass murderer, but come on. George W. Bush just terrible that he made that decision. 38. Herbert Hoover. He was very unlucky, of course, that the Great Depression started under his watch, but with his policies he made the Depression worse and was hated by pretty much everyone in America, so can't put him higher. 37. John Adams. Great founding father, stupid president. The Alien and Sedition Act was terrible, and because of it, many people actually went to prison. In a democracy like the United States, you just need to have the right to criticize the government. It's just basic sense of democracy. 36. Millard Fillmore. Another weak president from the 1850s. Damn, what a terrible decade in American history, actually. Anyway, Fillmore was weak. He tried to solve the slavery issue with the Compromise of 1850, but in my opinion, this compromise only made things worse. So, overall bad. 35. Joe Biden. I know it's kind of unfair to judge him right now because he only left office for 2 months or so. But a president overall should make a strong appearance and he should make wise decisions. And Joe Biden lacked both of it. The withdrawal from Afghanistan was chaotic and his help for Ukraine not consistent enough. He could have sent more weapons, but he just refused to do it because of political issues. 34. Martin Van Buren. The biggest reason why he is down here on this list is because his presidency was just underwhelming. He was only 4 years in office, and the biggest event which happened in his presidency was an economic crisis. He also continued the policy of Indian removal from his predecessor Andrew Jackson, which basically meant that Indian tribes had to leave their original settlements. 33. Zachary Taylor. He didn't make many mistakes, but he was just underwhelming, and he was only in office for 1.5 years, so there are no real positive things. He was never a politician, he was a military guy, and he lacked the experience of a president. 32. Benjamin Harrison. Also not terrible, but underwhelming as well. He spent more time preparing and celebrating Christmas than he spent in the Oval Office with fixing the issues of the state. Also, he gave medals of honor to the guys who committed the Wounded Knee massacre. What were your thoughts, Benjamin Harrison? 31. Jimmy Carter. Look, I love this guy's personality. He's just a great guy. But I have to criticize a little bit of his presidency, and not a little bit, a great bit of his presidency. I don't like how he handled the Iranian hostage crisis. This flip-flopping of negotiating and then refusing and then negotiating and then refusing was just terrible, and it was not good for the victims. 30. William McKinley. Look, if logging through history is ever reacting to this video or is ever watching this video, I know he is from your hometown in Ohio. I apologize that he is down so far on my list, but I will now explain why. Yeah, I know the United States had an economic upswing under the presidency of William McKinley, but one thing about this guy, I just find it terrible. Under his presidency, the American-Philippine War happened, and this war was just a great disaster, and the United States did massive war crimes in the Philippines, and William McKinley did nothing about it. He didn't stop it, he didn't intervene, and I think that makes him not a good president. Sorry. 29. Lyndon B. Johnson. The only reason why this guy is not further down on this list is because he signed the Civil Rights Act of 1963. Otherwise, he was kind of a disaster, I think. He was a Vietnam War lover and sent more and more troops to Vietnam, completely ignoring the fact that the war was looking bad for the Americans, and it was clear that northern Vietnam and the Viet Cong wouldn't surrender any soon, so it was just a terrible thing to do, sending just more Americans there. 28. Rutherford B. Hayes. Look, I have to defend this guy a little bit. He's 28 and not further down, because yes, he ended Reconstruction, but you have to think about this. If Samuel Tilden gets elected president, he will stop Reconstruction immediately. So it doesn't matter, and the Republicans had to do any kind of compromise. But anyway, he did nothing remarkable for the United States, so I think 28 is a really justified place for him. 27. Donald Trump. Look, most of the people in Europe will disagree with me and will say Donald Trump is one of the worst US presidents ever. And the people in America will also disagree with me because many of them think Donald Trump is one of the greatest presidents in the history of America. I think he's somewhere in the middle. I don't think that everything Trump did was just bad, but he was not good either. He was very disrespectful against Zelensky. But then you also have to see the positives about Donald Trump. He signed in his first presidency the First Step Act, which reversed harsh sentencing for people who go to jail and ended some stupid laws. Also, I think he's on the right way with immigration, even though I think he's too harsh about it. But the United States has to do something against immigration. It's a fact. 26. Bill Clinton. It's mainly just his sex scandal, and I pretty much don't like this guy. He was on the Jeffrey Epstein list, and his policies, I don't know, I'm a bit more towards conservatism, so he's not my favorite politician. I understand why people like Bill Clinton. He gave the US a better economy, but for me he's just mediocre. 25. William Howard Taft. He's just in the middle. Theodore Roosevelt hated him after installing him technically as president because he boosted him in the election of 1908. Roosevelt thought he was not progressive enough. I think he was just inactive. I'm not a big fan of fat shaming this guy, just he was the thickest president in American history. And it's not true that he was stuck in a bathtub. That's completely false. So, mediocre again. 24. Gerald Ford. This guy was only around for a bit more than a year, but he signed a Privacy Act which protected American citizens from government spying, so well done. 23. Grover Cleveland. I said it earlier, I'm not a big fan about some of the Democratic presidents because I don't like their policies, but Grover Cleveland was, I think he was true to himself. He vetoed a lot of stuff and said the Constitution doesn't allow me to do this and this and this, so I think he stands out of the Democratic presidents in the 19th century. Although I have to say he's kind of weird. He married a girl who was very, very younger than he was, and he knew her as a little girl, so it was kind of cringe and weird. But the economy was stable and okay under him, so I think the middle fits perfect for him. 22. Andrew Jackson. Look, he was the first president who cared about the common man, the common guy, not the rich elite in the USA, but the commoners, farmers, workers. But then there are his policies about Indian removal, which I don't like. I had a more positive view on Jackson a few months earlier, but the more I learn about the guy, the more negative he gets for me. So 22, I think, is very justified for me. 21, Richard Nixon. This guy would be down in the bottom of this list, considering the fact that he was involved in the Watergate scandal, which was one of the biggest, I think I would consider the biggest scandal in American history, and he resigned. But he did some great things in his presidency. He ended the American involvement in Vietnam. Also, I don't like the fact how it worked, but he ended it. And his détente policy towards the Soviet Union was very successful, so well done. It's a shame that he did this scandal, only to win re-election, which he had almost saved, so it was just dumb. 20. John Tyler. For all the shit he has given, I think it was okay. I know he joined the Confederates in the Civil War and was elected to the Confederate Congress, but John Tyler set the role for the American vice president. He was the vice president, William Henry Harrison died, and then he took over, and it was not clear who will take over. So John Tyler was the first guy to say, look, the vice president will take over from the president. And he pushed the annexation of Texas, which helped James Polk, and James Polk is today considered as one of the better presidents in American history, so I think it's just unfair to say that John Tyler was a bad president. He wasn't. 19. James Garfield. Biggest what-if president in American history. He could have been great, but he got assassinated because the people knew his daily routine plan, and some crazy dude came to him and assassinated him. And it's just a case of wasted potential. He had pretty much all the things for a good president. Just a shame that he got assassinated, really. 18. George H.W. Bush. No new taxes. No, I'm just kidding. I don't think this is really bad. It's not a bad thing. George H.W. Bush was a good president, I think. He signed the Americans with Disabilities Act, which helped people with disabilities in the United States. And he also did a good job, I think, in the first Gulf War, so not bad. 17. John Quincy Adams. Maybe he's so far up in this list because I like this guy. He was kind of weird, but also kind of cool. But he did some good things. He did a lot of infrastructure programs for the United States of America. And yeah, that's mostly what he did. But sorry, he's just so far up this list because I think this is one of the most interesting people in American history, really. 16. James Madison. Also a founding father. He did a decent job in the War of 1812 as commander-in-chief. He was the only US president who led actively an army in battle as acting president. Overall, can't really say something negative about him. 15. Chester Arthur. He did a massive good thing for the United States. He ended the spoil system, the corruption system which says, oh, I know you or you are a family member, so you have a better chance to get a position in my administration or in the US government in general. 14. Ulysses S. Grant. I have to say I like Ulysses Grant because he was one of the major reasons the Union won the Civil War. I know that has nothing to do with his presidency, but in his presidency he created the Yellowstone National Park, which is the biggest national park in the US and in my opinion the most beautiful one. He continued reconstruction policies and he supported the rights of black people. 13. James Polk. One of the most unknown presidents, but he was great. He expanded the territory of the United States greatly into Mexico, and cities like LA or San Francisco would today never be part of the US if James Polk didn't start the war against Mexico. 12. James Monroe. His presidency marked one of the most prosperous times in American history, the era of good feelings. He also enforced the Monroe Doctrine, which I think is a great doctrine, even though I think the United States should have the right to intervene if they have to. 11. Harry Truman. This is now from my German perspective. Harry Truman and his Marshall Plan ensured that Germany would become once again a great nation economically. I also think that the hate of the Truman Doctrine is too much overblown. Yes, the United States shouldn't play the police officer in the world, but it was never intended to be like it. The atomic bombs, yeah, it was a kind of a 50-50 thing. I think it had positive things, but it had also very horrible and negative things, so regardless, I think he is one of the greatest presidents of the United States. 10. Barack Obama. I lean towards conservatism, but I think Obamacare was great. I think Medicare should be expanded. Here in Germany, it's standard that everyone has access to healthcare, and I think the system in the United States is pretty bad. So great job, Obama. Also, he had the balls to send Navy SEALs to Pakistan to kill Osama bin Laden, even though it wasn't completely sure that he was in this compound, and the United States would have been in big trouble if he would not have been there. But Obama just said, let's risk it for the biscuit, and it was worth it. 9. John F. Kennedy. We shall go to the moon in this decade and do the other things. Not because they are easy, but because they are hard. I don't think I have to say anything else. John F. Kennedy was a great speecher, a great president, and a great guy. And I admire him. Yeah, I know Bay of Pigs, it was kind of a disaster, but he handled the Cuban Missile Crisis also very well. And his speech was one of the biggest reasons the United States landed on the moon in 1969. 8. Thomas Jefferson. Although I don't like him personally, I cannot ignore the Louisiana Purchase. That was the greatest territorial expansion in all of American history. I don't like his economy policy, which says basically, okay, it's a state-run economy. I don't think that's a very great thing. But Jefferson was crucial in the American Revolution and also as a president for the development of the United States as a country. So, well-deserved 8th place, I think. 7. Franklin D. Roosevelt. He led the United States through the Second World War and showed a great leadership throughout the entirety of the war. I also like his New Deal policies, like an 8-hour workday and this kind of stuff. I think was pretty cool. So, yeah, well done, Franklin D. Roosevelt. 6. Ronald Reagan. In my mind, the quintessential conservative politician and president. He did a great work to show the world that the Soviet Union was a failed state, and his determination that the Soviets would lose the Afghan war was also very great, and it's one of the reasons the Afghans won that war. So he is near the top 5, but he lacks this one great achievement, and the next guy has it. 5. Dwight D. Eisenhower. Interstate highway system, creation of NASA, ended the Korean War, helping the Allies to win the Second World War. He is just a badass and I think a great president in general. 4. Calvin Coolidge. I just like this guy's personality. I think he was the most down-to-earth president out of all the presidents. He was not a man of words. He was quiet and didn't speak much. And he signed a law which ensured that every person who is born in the United States is a citizen of the United States. Very important law, I think. Also fought corruption very well, so yeah, he didn't make any mistake I could think about. 3. George Washington. I know that many Americans have him in number 1, but I think he was very great, but he was not the greatest. For beginners, this guy pretty much had the possibility to declare himself a king, but he chose not to. He didn't want to become president. The people around him forced him in his role, and he did pretty well. He limited himself into 2 terms in office, setting a precedent that would last until the times of FDR. I think in his second presidency was kind of losing his grip. I don't think that his response to the Whiskey Rebellion was very good, so 3rd place is okay, but not more for George Washington, although he was a great president. 2. Theodore Roosevelt. If I had to pick a favorite president based on his personality, I would definitely choose Theodore Roosevelt. I think he was a great guy. And he also had so many accomplishments, more than any other president. Although the guy on number 1 has a bigger accomplishment, and that's why he's number 1. Theodore Roosevelt was very, very important. Signed the Pure Food and Drug Act. Was the first to invite the press into the White House. Was the first to invite an African American into the White House. Signed the Square Deal. Created a lot of national parks. Teddy, he didn't like that name by the way, was the second greatest president in American history, but there is one person that is above all. Number 1, Abraham Lincoln. He of course ended slavery in the United States, which I think was the greatest accomplishment any president had done. He also won the American Civil War against the Confederate States of America, which I think is the second biggest accomplishment any president did. Brilliant dude, and it's just a shame that he got assassinated. And Andrew Johnson took over, oh my god, that was just so bad. Anyway, that was it for this video. Please consider liking and subscribing. See you next time at the next video. I think it will be about World War II or Rome or the Syrian Civil War. I have to think about what my next video topic will be. Bye bye.